You wake up with a sharp mind, strong opinions, and big goals. Yet by the end of the day, you feel strangely drained, unmotivated, and disappointed in yourself. You know what you should do. You understand the consequences of not doing it. And still, nothing moves. From the outside, it looks like laziness. From the inside, it feels like something is broken. But here's the truth most people never hear. If you're intelligent, motivation doesn't fail because you're not weak. It fails because your brain works differently. Smart people don't struggle with effort. They struggle with friction. And modern life is built to quietly sabotage exactly how their minds operate. Motivation isn't missing. It's buried under invisible cognitive overload. Highly intelligent people are excellent at seeing complexity. They can simulate outcomes, predict consequences, and imagine multiple futures at once. That sounds like a superpower, and sometimes it is. But most of the time, it creates paralysis. When you see too many options, your brain doesn't choose one. It delays. When you see all the ways something could go wrong, your brain doesn't act. It waits. And waiting feels productive because thinking feels like work. But thinking without action slowly exhausts your motivation system. Your brain burns energy without producing momentum. By the time it's time to act, the fuel tank is already empty. This is why smart people overthink simple tasks. Not because they're incapable, but because their brains refuse to move without certainty. They don't just want to start. They want to start correctly, perfectly, efficiently. And that demand for optimality silently kills motivation. The brain says, if we can't do this the right way, let's not do it at all. So the task gets postponed, then postponed again, until guilt replaces motivation. And guilt never creates action. It only creates shame. Here's where neuroscience matters. Motivation is not a moral trait. It's a chemical state. It depends on dopamine, but not in the way social media explains it. Dopamine isn't the reward. It's the signal that something is worth pursuing. And smart people accidentally starve that signal. When you constantly analyze, plan, and mentally rehearse a task, your brain partially releases dopamine before you ever begin. You feel a small sense of completion just by thinking about doing the thing. That premature dopamine release tricks your brain into believing progress has already been made. So when it's time to actually start, there's no motivational surge left. The brain asks, why bother? We already did this. And you feel tired without having done anything. This is why intelligent people feel most motivated at night, when action is impossible, when the pressure to perform is gone. The brain finally relaxes and allows possibility without consequence. You feel inspired, clear, and ambitious. But in the morning, when execution matters, motivation vanishes. Not because you changed overnight, but because daylight demands commitment, and commitment triggers fear of imperfection. Another hidden factor is identity pressure. Smart people grow up being praised for potential, not effort. They're told they're gifted, capable, special. That sounds encouraging, but it creates a fragile self-image. When success becomes part of who you are, failure becomes a threat to your identity. So instead of risking visible failure, the brain chooses inaction. Not doing something feels safer than trying and discovering your limits. Laziness becomes a shield. Procrastination becomes protection. And motivation disappears because your brain is prioritizing self-preservation over progress. Then there's the environment problem. Modern life floods intelligent brains with stimulation. Notifications, news, content, ideas, opinions. Smart minds absorb more of it. They make more connections. They process more inputs. But attention is not infinite. Every scroll, every comparison, every half-finished thought fragments focus. Motivation requires clarity, and clarity cannot exist in constant mental noise. You're not unmotivated. You're overstimulated. Your brain never gets the silence it needs to generate desire. This leads to a dangerous misunderstanding. People think motivation comes before action, that you need to feel ready before you begin. But neuroscience shows the opposite. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. And this is where smart people get trapped. They wait for the internal signal that never arrives. Less intelligent strategies often work better here because they're simpler. They don't require emotional alignment. They just move. Smart people want internal coherence first. They want the feeling to match the action. But the brain doesn't work that way under pressure. The solution isn't more discipline. Discipline is a blunt tool. It works short-term, then burns you out. The real solution is reducing cognitive friction, making action stupidly easy. So easy your intelligence doesn't get a chance to interfere. This means shrinking tasks to the point where they feel almost meaningless. Not work on the project, but open the file. Not start exercising, but put on shoes. Smart brains resist big, ambiguous tasks. They cooperate with tiny, concrete ones. Another shift is redefining success. Smart people often define success as outcomes. Finish the task, do it well, get results. But motivation responds to process, not outcomes. The brain rewards progress, not perfection. When you redefine success as showing up, starting badly, or doing the minimum viable effort, motivation slowly returns. Because now the brain sees action as safe. Failure no longer threatens identity. It becomes part of the process. You also need to stop trying to think your way out of motivational problems. Motivation is not solved by insight. You can understand everything and still feel stuck. That's because insight lives in the prefrontal cortex. But motivation lives deeper in the brain. It responds to movement, novelty, and completion. Not logic, not self-criticism, not motivational quotes. If understanding was enough, smart people would never struggle. But they do, because knowing and doing are governed by different systems. There's also a painful truth most intelligent people avoid. Sometimes motivation disappears because the goal isn't yours anymore. You chose it when you were younger, or when someone else expected it of you, or when it symbolized status, approval, or safety. Your brain resists because it senses misalignment, and no amount of discipline can override that forever. Smart people feel unmotivated when they're chasing goals that no longer reflect who they are. The brain isn't lazy, it's honest. So what actually works? First, stop asking why you're unmotivated. That question keeps you stuck in analysis. Instead, ask what reduces resistance right now. Lower the bar, reduce the scope. Change the environment, remove distractions aggressively, not politely. Treat attention like a limited resource, not a moral test. Second, separate your identity from your output. You are not your productivity. You are not your potential. You are a person who acts, learns, and adjusts. Third, create momentum before meaning. Start small. Let movement generate clarity. Let action create belief. Motivation isn't something smart people lack. It's something they accidentally block by overthinking, by over-identifying, by demanding perfection before permission. When you stop trying to feel motivated and start designing for action, everything shifts. You don't need to become less intelligent. You need to make your intelligence stop fighting you. Because in the end, motivation isn't about wanting something badly enough. It's about making progress feel safe. And once your brain feels safe to move, motivation doesn't need to be forced. It shows up naturally, quietly, consistently, and stays.